Now, an organization recently did a analysis of Bernie Sanders' tax and healthcare plans. It was a study from the Tax Policy Center. Now, surprisingly, the so-called left-leaning, or at the very least centrist, depending on who you ask, was very critical of Bernie Sanders' plans to expand Medicare for all, as well as tax the rich more to help pay for it, right? Now, that of course led to many outlets publishing hatchet jobs against Bernie Sanders. Now, these news outlets, quote unquote news outlets, that include some of those who might be considered left-leaning sources, said the plan would increase the deficit by some $18 trillion between 2017 and 2026. And to go along with that, these same news sources, one being the Washington Post, ended up using this study to publish just article after article burying that hatchet in the back of Bernie Sanders. For example, as I said, Washington Post posted 4 critical Sanders stories in a space of 7 hours. Now, of course, I went through in a previous video the specifics on what they left out, what they got wrong in those studies. And this is not me saying it. This is backed on information from healthcare experts, right, that looked at this analysis. And they said, wait, you left out some really important things. You said it's going to add $18 trillion on top of what we already spend. Well, we already spend $21 trillion on healthcare right now. That would replace that spending. So we would end up spending less. But they don't put that in. They don't add that. They assume that we would pay even more for prescription drugs, 50% higher on prescription drugs than Medicaid currently pays. Well, that would make no sense, as the whole point of a Medicare-for-all system is to give the government more leverage in order to negotiate for drug prices with corporations, with pharmaceutical companies. This is the kind of laughable bullshit that was put inside of these studies and passed off as fact by these so-called think tanks. Now, as I said, new information from the International Business Times has just pointed out how the 2 major organizations behind this tax policy center, the so-called think tanks, has received huge contributions from the health insurance and pharmaceutical industries. Industries, they say, whose profits could be reduced by Sanders' single-payer Medicare-for-all plan. Gee, I wonder why they might not be in favor of Medicare-for-all. I wonder. Now, they write, quote, that is on top of money the groups have received from Wall Street firms, fossil fuel companies, efforts connected to the billionaire Charles Koch, a foundation founded by the heirs to the Walmart fortune, and others that Sanders has criticized. Those are all donors to the Tax Policy Center. And of course, the guy that I always like to mention, Pete Peterson. He's the guy that wants to cut your Social Security. That's who the Tax Policy Center is funded by. Fix the debt, which is a Pete Peterson Foundation funded place. I can't understand why they would be against Bernie Sanders' plans. Well, I'm going to go to the International Business Times to help me understand this. Quote, the health insurance industry donors to the think tanks include health insurer Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, delivered between $300,000 and $600,000 in 2012 and 2014 to the Urban Institute, while insurer United Healthcare gave Brookings between $2 million and $4 million since 2012. Several of the country's top drug manufacturers and suppliers gave to Brookings. The think tank's donors include the Roche Group, donated between $1 million and $2 million since 2012, Sanofi, $125,000 to $250,000, and Amgen, $100,000 to $200,000 in donations. Now, there's more. 2 foundations connected to the pharmaceutical industry also gave generously. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which was started by Johnson & Johnson founder in 1972, gave between $210,000 and $525,000 to Brookings, and an undisclosed amount above $3 million sent to Urban. The Foundation for Global Pharmaceutical Company Bristol Myers Squibb gave between $55,000 and $125,000 to Brookings, and MetLife, which has some health-related insurance business, gave a combined $300,000 to $750,000 to Brookings in 2013, 2014, and 2015. Gee, I wonder why these two groups and the Tax Policy Center came out with the hatchet job against Medicare-for-all. Now, of course, to be fair, both Brookings and the Urban Institute say, or they told the International Business Times that they're not at all affected by the funding from Wall Street banks, health insurance companies, Big Pharma, and the Koch brothers. No. See, that money does not affect us at all, despite the fact that they continue to put the hatchet in the back of Bernie Sanders at every single opportunity they can. Now, the Urban Institute reached out to the International Business Times and explained its funding sources in great detail. They told the International Business Times in an email that the Urban Institute receives 49% of its funding from government sources, usually in a competitive bidding process. Beyond that, researchers are also supported by the foundation, 43% of funding last year, other nonprofits, 5%, as well as trustees, individuals, corporations, and universities at 1% each. They also said that the Urban Institute doesn't take official positions on issues, nor does it have an advocacy agenda of any kind. So to be fair, I've just given you their side of the story. Take it as you will. Now, the IB Times also notes that the Tax Policy Center has also released analysis of several other candidates' tax plans, including Hillary Clinton. Now, their analysis said her tax increases would, quote, target the top 1% of taxpayers, and noted that marginal tax rates would go up. Okay, but then they say the effect of that would reduce incentives to work, save, and invest. That sure sounds like a left-leaning organization to me, right? Or at least it sounds like centrist, right? Right? No, not really. Look, these so-called think tanks are essentially, in my opinion, they're trying to do, all they're trying to do is think of ways to trick progressives into supporting right-wing policies, like cutting taxes for rich people and getting rid of Social Security and Medicare. They're also thinking of ways to put hatchets in the back of people who support progressive ideas. And of course, they've got the corporate media to help, as well as some left-leaning websites that go in that direction. However, if we decide to, as Sanders supporters, that we want to point that shit out, we're conspiracy theorists. It's all conspiracy. Oh, the media is not really against you. Come on, what are you talking about? You're just whining, you're crying, you're conspiracy theorists. No. There's no conspiracy. All you got to do is follow the money. You follow the money, you'll find all the answers. And it's not just me saying it. Don't believe me. Okay? Believe your lying eyes. Follow the money. That's all you have to do to see what's going on here. But no. These think tanks and these other publications, Washington Post, Daily Beast, etc., say, no. Ignore that. Do not believe your lying eyes. Money has absolutely no influence on our findings, on our research whatsoever. Why don't we trust the late Antonin Scalia when he said that money does not give the appearance of corruption when you give money, whether it be research, funding, politics, media, education, whatever. Now, it's funny. There's some irony here, is that these same outlets report on the Koch brothers funding universities that now, of course, because of budget cuts, lack proper funding. Well, here comes the Koch brothers, right? Funding these universities. And guess what? They put in their own their own educational agenda, where now they're teaching Koch brother friendly propaganda to students instead of actual facts. But look, when we talk about think tanks, the Washington Post and the others, they ignore that. Why? Because they don't like Bernie Sanders. They want to slam Bernie Sanders because they're afraid of the change that he actually wants to bring, that he represents. Now, alone, Bernie Sanders can't do anything. But Bernie Sanders has the unique power of empowering other people into action, into change. He's a nexus, if you will. He gets people motivated for change. And that can really rock the boat. They don't want us unified. They don't want us fighting for progressive causes. Because that will impact their bottom line. Look, man, that's what they do. They just want to slam Bernie Sanders because the Democratic Party establishment is rolling in campaign contributions from health insurance companies, bankers, and CEOs. And of course, they claim that, hey, we got to take that money because we don't want to lose our fundraising advantage against the Republicans. I mean, Barney Frank said the same thing. Well, would you rather Wall Street give only 80% of its campaign contributions to Republicans or 100%? And what are we going to do? Yeah, how about Barney Frank? How about they give 100%? Because how about the Democratic Party grow some balls and stop serving corporate masters and actually go to the people for funding and actually represent the people? That's what we want. And that is why we need the money out of politics. And it's also why we need grassroots funded independent media. Because you're never going to get the whole story from groups and media organizations that do nothing but prioritize profit over everything else.